By the professional contractors of NECA and union craftspeople of IBEW Local 48, providing vision for the future.
And by Kinko's, the Copy Center, offering a wide range of business services 24 hours a day.
Good evening. I'm Jim Lehrer in Washington.
And I'm Roger Mudd in New York. After the news summary, we get the story of the high water at Kansas City. Next, we hear from Midwest governors in Washington lobbying for flood aid. And finally, the world view from Beijing.
Major funding for the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour has been provided by the Archer Daniels Midland Company. ATM, supermarket to the world. And by New York Life. Yet another example of New York Life's wise investment philosophy. And by PepsiCo. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the annual financial support from viewers like you.
The House tonight overwhelmingly approved the emergency flood relief bill. The bill, which now goes on to the Senate, would provide about $3 billion for victims of the Midwestern flooding. Governors from 6 of those flooded states met with President Clinton today in Washington seeking additional assistance. The president said he would ask the Congress to increase the aid package to about $4 billion. Estimates of damage in the area have run as high as $12 billion. Meanwhile, residents of Kansas City, Missouri worked feverishly today to hold back the swelling Kansas and Missouri rivers which meet in their city. At midday, the Kansas River crested at nearly 55 feet and the Missouri at nearly 49 feet. But the city is protected by a 57-foot high wall. The Missouri River broke through a 100-foot levee in Waldron, Missouri today, threatening that town's water supply. Most of Waldron's residents were evacuated before the levee broke. We'll have more of the floods after the news summary. Jim?
Thousands of people have been killed by more than a month of floods in southern Asia. The waters are beginning to recede, but millions in Bangladesh, India, and Nepal are homeless and short of food and water. Terry Lloyd of Independent Television News reports from Bangladesh.
Over half of Bangladesh is now underwater, following the heaviest monsoon rainfall for 5 years. Almost 6 million people are homeless. At Camilla in the east, where the River Gumti has smashed its way through a defensive mud wall, these families have become known as the bank people. They took us by boat to see the remains of their village, which was swallowed up 9 days ago. Thankfully, they were warned the water was coming, and they climbed to the top of the trees with their children until the army arrived to take them to safety. The waves washed right over the tops of their simple homes, dragging most of their possessions away down the valley. They will slowly rebuild them, but they won't last long, for these people are plagued by catastrophic flooding and cyclones. The good news for the people of Camillo, and there's precious little of it, is there's been no rainfall for 24 hours, just the July heat. But the short-term weather forecast is for more rain, and the monsoon season has another full month to go. They now join the queues for a daily ration of lentils and rice, handed out by the Muslim Red Crescent charity organization. First, they must have their fingerprints taken to make sure no one has more than their share. Some have tried to escape to safer ground. We counted 75 people on board this boat, which is being towed by a young boy in the water. They want to get out before diarrhea, cholera, and other waterborne diseases add to the death toll.
22 deaths were reported in Bangladesh today from waterborne diseases. Officials have said several thousand could die from disease in the 3 flood-damaged Asian countries.
In Washington, Senate Democrats today yielded to the pressure of a Republican filibuster and agreed to scale back President Clinton's national service program. The plan would be cut back from 5 to 3 years and would tax the benefits to the wealthier students. The program would give college students up to $10,000 in tuition help in return for community service. A vote to break the filibuster is tentatively scheduled for tomorrow, but even with today's compromise, the count is expected to be close. President Clinton today asked the Congress for more money and tougher laws to control illegal immigration. He wants increased penalties for alien smuggling and a speed up in the deportation of undocumented aliens who do not have what were called credible claims of asylum. Those denied asylum could appeal to a senior Justice Department official for an immediate yes or no. The president also requested almost $173 million to hire 600 new Border Patrol agents and upgrade their technology. Mr. Clinton announced the measures at the White House this morning.
The simple fact is that we must not and we will not surrender our borders to those who wish to exploit our history of compassion and justice. We cannot tolerate those who traffic in human cargo, nor can we allow our people to be endangered by those who would enter our country to terrorize Americans. But the solution to the problem of illegal immigration is not simply to close our borders. The solution is to welcome legal immigrants and legal, legitimate refugees, and to turn away those who do not obey the laws. We must say no to illegal immigration so we can continue to say yes to legal immigration.
The American Civil Liberties Union and the Lambda Defense Fund today filed a legal challenge to President Clinton's recently announced policy on homosexuals in the military. The suit, brought in the name of 7 gay and lesbian members of the military, claims the so-called don't ask, don't tell policy violates the free speech clause of the First Amendment and the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment. The suit, filed in the Federal District Court in Washington, is the first court challenge to the Clinton policy. The White House acknowledged today that Mr. Clinton called presidential lawyer Vincent Foster the night before he committed suicide. Press Secretary Dee Dee Meyer said the president knew, along with a number of people in the White House, that Mr. Foster was having a rough time. Meyer said she was not suggesting there was any evidence that Foster was suicidal. Yesterday, the Justice Department said its investigation of Foster's death on Tuesday was actually a low-level inquiry by the U.S. Park Police.
IBM announced 35,000 more layoffs and an $8 billion loss today. Most of the second quarter loss was in the cost of the layoffs, the majority of which will be overseas. The company began a major downsizing last year after a series of heavy losses. Nearly 50,000 IBM employees have left or agreed to leave the company so far this year. The U.S. International Trade Commission ruled against 16 countries today for engaging in unfair trade in steel. It made permanent a range of punitive tariffs imposed earlier on the countries for selling steel in the United States at artificially low prices. A national commission to study the savings and loan scandal has recommended a major overhaul of the nation's financial system. The commission, chartered by Congress, said federal deposit insurance allowed the S&L scandal to spin out of control. It proposed eliminating all insurance except for money market type accounts invested in safe short-term investments.
President Clinton has summoned Secretary of State Christopher home from his Asian trip so they can consult in Washington about the fighting in South Lebanon. Israel launched air and artillery strikes on Muslim guerrillas in the region 3 days ago to retaliate for the killing of 7 Israeli soldiers. White House Press Secretary Myers said today the Hezbollah guerrillas and their main backers, the Iranian government, had started the exchange of fire in order to derail the Mideast peace negotiations. At least 56 people have been killed and nearly 300 wounded by the Israeli shell fire or by the guerrillas' rockets. United Nations officials said more than 120,000 villagers in South Lebanon had fled their homes. Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin said the offensive would not be stopped until the guerrillas stopped firing rockets at northern Israel.
The Bosnian peace talks resumed in Geneva today, but fighting also continued in Sarajevo. Ian Williams of Independent Television News reports from the Bosnian capital.
A short while ago, shells crashed into communities just above a new French UN base. The attack sent the troops running for cover. They had already been on high alert after Sunday's assault on them, which provoked warnings from the UN commander here that he will retaliate if attacked again. The bombardment close to the French followed a day of intermittent shelling on the outskirts of the city. This did not prevent the Bosnian president attending the peace talks in Geneva, though before he left Sarajevo, his vice president insisted there will be no agreement to partition the country.
Why should we sign our death penalty? You see, they want to create 3 ethnic states here. And then, you know, that will be just, they will create conditions for continuation of these fights. And now, not only 3 ethnic states, but 3 ethnic states after the ethnic cleansing is finished.
For the first time in several days, the city center was relatively quiet this morning. People ventured onto streets that have been virtually deserted, free for a while from fear of attack. Some paid their respects at a memorial to another war. 52 years ago today, the partisan uprising against the Germans began in Bosnia. In spite of the hardship of 16 months under siege, most of those we spoke to wanted their president to take a tough line in Geneva. There is also strong opposition from the military and from within the Bosnian government to any deal that would partition the country. Certainly the ceasefire that was supposed to accompany the Geneva peace talks has totally failed.
The Bosnian Muslim president reported some progress at the Geneva talks. International mediator Lord Owen said it could be some time before a settlement might be reached.
An explosion in Milan, Italy, reportedly killed 3 people tonight. A car bomb was suspected. It went off outside Milan's municipal offices. About an hour later, there were 2 explosions in Rome. Italian television said one of them caused severe damage to the Basilica of St. John Lateran, which is one of Rome's greatest monuments. The other blast was near Capitol Hill Square, which had been designed by Michelangelo. There was no immediate word on deaths or injuries in the Rome explosion. The government in the past has blamed the mafia for other similar bombings. That's it for the news summary. Just ahead on the NewsHour, bailing out the Midwest, the view from China, and an essay on a special kind of hero.
The Midwest flooding is our lead story again tonight. Today was Kansas City's day to worry. The Missouri and Kansas rivers are at flood stages at their confluence at the border between Kansas City, Missouri and Kansas City, Kansas. All the businesses and homes in nearby city of Parkville were evacuated. In a Kansas City, Kansas business district along the river, stores were evacuated and buildings sandbagged in case the levees broke under the pressure of the flood waters. Governor Mel Carnahan of Missouri is here now to give us an update on the situation in the Kansas City area. Governor, is the worst over?
Well, I'm told that about noon today was the crest of this crisis, and that they're resting a little bit easier. There were a number of precautionary evacuations done in the area in both Missouri and Kansas. I'm told as many as 7,000 people were moved out of their homes, and fortunately the flooding did not reach all of those, but it was done as a precaution because there was great fear that the levees on either the Kansas or the Missouri side would be broken today.
But it just turned out they were not.
It turned out they were not. Water supplies also were threatened for the city of Kansas City, and that apparently is holding, and they are on restricted use, but they are operating and I believe going to pass the crisis. We are losing some water systems downstream from Kansas City. Lexington, Missouri lost its water system during the day, and we're taking great precautions and trying to get people to turn off their systems before they're swamped so that we can keep them and get them going again quicker.
St. Joseph up the river also still has a problem, does it not?
Yes, they went down on Sunday morning. We were able to get bottled water and bulk water in for drinking purposes in a record short time, but they are out of water, and almost all businesses are closed down and employers are closed down because there is no running water.
Have these levees around Kansas City ever been tested like this?
None. This is the worst test that we've had to endure, and there are really some success stories in all this, but of course the real newsy ones are the ones that break.
Yeah. When we use the word crest, what that means is that is when the river started going back down. Is that right?
That's correct.
And all expectation it started back down, and that it's not expected to rise again.
And I think that's true unless we get more rain. We've had the crest about 10 days to 2 weeks ago that we thought was the crest of this flood, but with the heavy rains upstream a few days ago, that's the result we're getting now.
You say about 7,000 people were evacuated in the Kansas City area, is that right?
That's correct.
And any other major flooding other than what we reported?
No, that was the remarkable activity for the day. The worst of the last few days was the loss of the water system at St. Joseph on Sunday.
Yeah. All right, Governor, don't go away. Thank you. We turn now to 2 other flood battles, a personal one being fought with the Mississippi and a political one being fought here in Washington. We have back-to-back reports from Kwame Holman in Washington and Elizabeth Brackett in St. Genevieve, Missouri, just south of St. Louis.
Fighting the river is nothing new for the historic Missouri river town of St. Genevieve. Settled in 1735, St. Genevieve was the first European town west of the Mississippi. After disastrous floods wiped out the town in the late 1700s, city fathers moved it from the Mississippi's riverbanks to higher ground nearby. This year's floods have shown that they didn't move it high enough. Though most of the historic homes are above water at the moment, 70 other homes have been swallowed up by the river. Coast Guard Ensign Jerry Nart patrols Main Street by boat.
We get predicted crests from time to time, and it seems like for a point of time on a daily basis, we would get a crest one day, the next day they would say, well, sorry, that wasn't really the crest. Here's the next one. And it would keep going up to just that. And then, unfortunately, some of the levees broke in some of the communities south of here, and then the water recedes around here as a result, because all that water then empties into their town. In that case, it gives them a little reprieve around here. They aren't necessarily grateful that someone else's town is flooded. No one wants that to happen by any far stretch of means.
The ever-changing crest reports have made Richard Ullman's battle to save the family home particularly frustrating. The house is on Main Street, just north of downtown. Now the levee Ullman, his neighbors, and volunteers have built over the last 4 weeks sits on Main Street, just barely holding off the water from Ullman's front door.
When it was 39 foot, the first crest, you thought it was going to be. Then after you kept getting more rain, hearing from rain up above, you know, you was only getting like a few inches at a time, maybe a foot. Kept going to 40, 41, and you was staying ahead of it all the time. So, you know, there wasn't no thought of really giving up.
The crest prediction reports are made by the Army Corps of Engineers. When a crest is reached, it does not mean the danger has passed. Additional rain or levee breaks can mean a new crest a few hours or a few days later. What's really happening, says Army Corps of Engineer Colonel Jim Craig, is that the Mississippi has been on a continuing crest in St. Louis area since a week ago Sunday.
We sometimes try to predict where precisely the scientific crest is, but what we really did was Sunday evening we reached a crest here and we're still on that crest.
And when do you think the crest will be over? But people here would love to know.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to answer that question, but the answer really lies with Mother Nature. When's it going to stop raining?
Okay, Kim, top of your sandbag right here is 48 1/4.
The continuing or ever-changing crest has meant a careful watch on the levee in front of the Ullman house. This morning, National Guardsmen were taking new measurements, trying to predict just how high the river might go. After today's measurements were taken, the decision was made to try and raise the sandbags up to the 50-foot level. Hopefully that would protect the homes before next week's predicted crest. That one is expected to be at 48 feet. An hour later, sandbaggers arrived to help Ullman add the extra foot to the levee. Not volunteers this time, but prisoners from the Farmington Correctional Center just up the road. They had been helping out for the last 2 weeks, and inmate Robert Shorter said the hard work in 100-degree temperatures didn't bother him.
I'm contributing some kind of way and helping them. Letting them know I'm still thinking about them at all.
Think you're going to keep the river out?
I'm going to try. We're trying.
Just as important as the sandbagging was the pumping. Without the pump, water seeping through the levee would mean the Ullman house would quickly suffer the same fate as the houses just 3 doors away. With all the destruction in the area, Ullman says help from the government will be essential.
Right on this area, there's probably 25 houses down through there that people need money to get back in their homes. That's just in this small area. There's no telling how many families around here, you know, need the money.
Now, people say, well, these people built next to the river. It was on a floodplain. You know, they knew this could happen. Why should the government, why should tax dollars keep bailing them out?
Well, a lot of these houses, ours has been there 70 years. They're expected to flood of 47 foot.
Those in St. Genevieve who never thought their battle against the river would be this tough say they will continue to try and save what's left in their town, no matter how high or how long the Mississippi's crest might be. They say it's what those who first crossed the mighty river to put down roots here 250 years ago would expect.
Can't take it anymore.
Hang in there.
In an effort to demonstrate Washington's concern for victims of the Midwest flooding, President Clinton has visited the flood zone 3 times in the last month. It was after a tour of the flooded area of Des Moines, Iowa 2 weeks ago that the president promised emergency federal relief would soon be on its way.
I think there is enormous bipartisan support in the Congress for this. There is no sense that that this is something that should be held hostage to the budget negotiations. and we're going to do just fine on that, I think.
But today, while flood victims continue to battle high water, Congress still was battling over emergency funds to help them. At issue wasn't whether money for flood victims was needed. The debate was over how to pay for it.
Let us all admit, once and for all, that there are legitimate arguments on both sides of this issue of whether disaster relief should be paid for or should be allowed to add to the deficit.
We need a helping hand in the Midwest. We're not looking for your sympathy. We want some assistance to get back on our feet, and we shouldn't have to be embroiled in this partisan debate and see this kind of gridlock at the expense of needy people.
During today's debate, conservative Democrats argued for a voting rule that would allow them to propose making up the cost of flood relief with cuts in other federal programs.
All this member is suggesting is that we have an opportunity to vote up or down on a simple amendment, and that's to cut the discretionary budget next year across the board by 1% to pay for the first disaster assistance requested of $3 billion. That's all this member is requesting.
Republicans had an additional objection. They wanted to remove mention of a job training program championed by Los Angeles Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
There is nothing in this provision which helps the flood victims. There is nothing in this provision which relates to the Missouri or the Mississippi. In fact, the Waters Amendment is being floated on the flood waters of the Midwest. Why? Because in a freestanding up or down vote, it wouldn't survive the debate. It couldn't get 218 votes, or at least I assume that's what the Democratic leadership believes.
Last Thursday, using their combined opposition, 45 conservative Democrats and the Republicans were able to defeat the voting rule and thereby temporarily shelve the flood legislation.
Vote on the resolution is 205 yeas, 216 nays. The resolution is defeated.
That prompted this reaction from President Clinton yesterday.
And here are these people out here, up to their ears in tragedy, wondering when Congress is going to get around to passing the flood relief.
Spurred on by the president's comments, today's Washington visit by flood state governors, and angry calls from constituents, the House today took up the same flood legislation and late this afternoon sided with its supporters.
You cannot fool the people on this one. You're either for the flood victims or you're against them. If you're for them, you're going to vote for this rule. If you want to hold it up and you want to go home another weekend and explain to them that you didn't care enough about them to get past this nonsense, then you try it, because the American people will not stand for it. I yield back the balance of my time.
Let's not have a budget discussion. Let's have an emergency discussion. Let's pass this rule and pass this bill. Let's pull this Congress together and pull this country behind the people that are out there fighting for their lives in the Mississippi Valley today.
On this try, the controversial rule passed by 19 votes, leading to a final vote on flood relief, which carried overwhelmingly 400 to 27. Now the bill goes to the Senate, where the fight over the Waters Amendment could resurface.
6 Midwestern governors were in Washington today. They met with the president and with members of Congress to expedite this federal assistance for flood victims. 3 of those are with us tonight. Republicans Jim Edgar of Illinois, Terry Branstad of Iowa, plus the Democratic governor of Missouri, Mel Carnahan, who is still with us from earlier. It seems to me, Governor Edgar, you all had a productive day. You come, the Congress says okay, and they vote, and you got your money.
Yeah, I wish it happened that way every time we came out here. My sense was that both sides understood they needed to do something, and that we were glad to see that they took the action in the House. It's far from over. As we've pointed out for several days, it's going to take more than the $3 billion has been debated now, and I think everyone understands that, and I'm sure we'll be back.
Are you convinced that everybody understands that, Governor Branstad?
Well, it's an important first step, and when we met with the president this afternoon, he increased the amount, said he's going to recommend an additional $1.1 billion. We think the loss is in excess of $10 billion, so it's still going to have to go up. When we met in St. Louis, it was $2.5 billion. It's now up to $3 billion as it passed the House. Hopefully the Senate will increase it well beyond that, but, you know, the damages keep mounting as the rains continue and as the flooding hits more and more areas of the Midwest.
Governor Edgar, do you see a connection between President Clinton's attack on Congress yesterday and the quick vote today in the House?
Well, my sense is that many of those who opposed it last week were doing it on some reasons nothing to do with the flood, and they realized the time had come to move on. Those are arguments, those are battles that are still going to have to be fought down the road, but I think over the weekend the feeling was the time had come to move this.
Yeah. Governor Carnahan, are you going to go back to Missouri tonight or tomorrow and tell the people of Missouri that the people in Washington understand the problem in the flood areas of the Midwest?
I'm going to tell them that we are making it as vividly clear as possible the tremendous impact that this flood and this continuing flood is having on us. It's having it on all of us in the Midwest. And I think sometimes we have to come and dramatize it and draw pictures, if you will, and say that, well, we can't have business as usual. I objected to them trying to get into the budget debate and peripheral things. This should be a flood disaster bill for the Midwest, just as we've handled disasters this way in the past. That's the treatment we want. It's not a special treatment, and I object to any indication that we're getting special treatment. We're not.
Tell me why it isn't special.
Because the disasters of the hurricanes in Florida or the earthquakes in the West were treated on their own basis. That's what we want. We should not be embroiled in the overall budget debate. That's not the time to have it. If Congress can't act in a time of national military emergency, which they do, or in time of natural disaster, then they can't act at all. And I think that's the way the people of my state feel, and I feel that I'm clearly speaking for them when I bring that message. It's now's the time to get it done. Now, we did get over a step today, and I'm pleased. But we do have a Senate debate, and we don't want a recurrence of this or similar things. We felt we got an assurance that that was not likely. But
Where did you get that from?
Senator Mitchell and from Senator Dole, and I got it from my senators, and I think the other governors can speak for their conversations. But we didn't get any indication we were going to have a repeat of this in the Senate, but we sure don't want it. The other thing is the message that the size of the package has to be increased. It clearly is not adequate for the federal share, and we hope that it will be increased further in the Senate. And that was, we made that very plain, and the senators seemed receptive. The administration seemed receptive.
What did your senators from Iowa tell you? You have one of each. You have a Republican and a Democrat.
They've both been very supportive and very helpful in this process. And we also made the point that we need to waive the local and state match for some of these areas that are really hard hit.
Explain why that's so important.
When the federal government provides assistance, it's done like on a 75-25 match. But when a community has been devastated and they've lost their industry and jobs, it's very hard to come up with that 25% state and local match. It's been waived before. It was waived in the case of Hurricane Andrew and Hugo and many other instances. And so we've asked the administration and the Congress to see that it's waived in the same way that it has been in the past for those communities that are the hardest hit and the states that are the hardest hit. And the states represented here tonight have all been devastated. Our losses in Iowa, $2.7 billion, thousands of people out of work, millions of acres of farmland that has been wiped out for this crop year.
Is this bill that passed the House today, does it do what you want done?
It does, but not enough.
Not the match? What does it do to the match?
It doesn't do anything on the match. We hope that the Senate will address that, or the President, and we brought that issue up with the President. He indicated a willingness to consider that, although they have not moved as quickly on that as was done, say, with Hurricane Andrew last year in Florida.
Yeah. Governor Edgar, what kind of reading did you get from your Illinois congressional delegation, the senators and the House members?
They're supportive. I mean, they had some philosophical discussions about how you're going to pay for this, but I think everyone understands that's a debate that needs to be argued down the road.
Does it matter to you, as the governor of Illinois, does it matter to you whether it's on budget or off budget? Do you have a position on that?
No, my concern is to be treated the same as other disasters have been treated, whether on the East Coast or the West Coast. I think the Midwest ought to be treated the same, and that was the argument we were making today, and I think everyone subscribes to that.
So if it requires raising the federal deficit to provide this flood relief, that's fine with you?
Well, no, what they've done in the past is they have not got into the issue about how's it going to be paid for. They've passed the relief, and that's what we've asked for.
And then worried about it later.
And then you have to debate, and I think that debate will follow. But to say we're going to have that debate first while there are people who are homeless, people who are without jobs, businesses that can't reopen, I think they have their priorities wrong. They need to come in as they've done in the past and help those victims now, and then they can have that philosophical debate when there aren't people who are out of home and out of jobs waiting for the federal government to act.
Did you get the feeling, Governor Edgar, from anybody, either at the White House or in Congress, that, hey, wait a minute, guys, there's a limit to how much the federal, you better get this flood over in a hurry because there's a limit to how much money the federal government can come up with. This is a bad time for federal expenditures.
They all expressed the timing was not the best, but they know we don't control Mother Nature. But I might say both houses, both parties, and also the president understand that this is something the federal government has a responsibility to act. And just as they've acted in other disasters, the fact that this disaster might be greater than the ones they've dealt with in the past doesn't mean they're not going to act to help the people.
Did you smell any cap coming, Governor Branstad?
Well, the concern is that the amount they've been talking about is not adequate, but the encouraging news is that it keeps increasing. As the toll of the damages comes in, they, I think, realize that they're going to have to continue to do more, and in the past, the administrations and Congresses have taken that action. We're just asking for the same kind of treatment that's been provided.
Governor Carnahan, what's your feeling about whether or not there is a magic number out there about beyond which you're not going to be able to go no matter what happens out there?
No, I don't think anyone's going to impose it in that way. We will have to fight for what we get. We're doing that. We brought additional information to our Senate delegations over the weekend, and they're working with that to see what the actual figure will be in the Senate bill. And everyone recognized there will very likely have to be a supplemental because we are dealing with projections. With the floodwaters aren't down.
Yeah.
It's important that the Congress act now, but really the true nature of the damages we know is going to be much higher. We're approaching $3 billion in damages in Missouri alone, just to get the perspective of our damage against the size of the package. That's the reason we're so confident that ultimately the entire package will have to be larger. There will have to be a supplemental.
Let's go back from Washington back to each of your states for a few moments here. Governor Edgar, tell us what the floods have done thus far in your state.
Well, it's forced about 13,000 people from their homes. It's destroyed about 2,000 farms. It's put...
Destroyed them in what way?
Well, they're not going to have a crop this year, and they may not have a crop next year or for maybe a few more years because of, we don't know the extent of the damage to the soil. People are out of work. People that aren't really hit by the flood, their jobs rely on driving over a river, and they can't get over that river because the bridges are closed.
Particularly in all
Between
these
the
three,
two
all of
states,
these
right.
cases,
You
you've
can't
got
get
people
back
that are
and
going
forth.
across rivers to want to live in Illinois, work in Missouri, or whatever. You know.
So it's had a huge effect.
Missouri over here, sorry.
It's had
had
a huge effect, and it's touched the lives of tens of thousands of people already. And the thing to remember, this isn't over yet. We still have another week to go in Illinois.
How do you know that you have another week?
Because the flood's not going to crest in some parts till this time next week. Mm-hmm. And until it crests, we still don't know the extent of the damage. And even after it crests, it still could knock some of the levees over. But at the shortest, we have a week more to go, and there can be a lot more damage, a lot more people put out of work, a lot of people lose their homes, a lot of farms destroyed. So, again, back to the cost, all we can do now is estimate, and we just know it's going to keep going up.
Governor Branstad, of course, the situation in Des Moines got an awful lot of attention, national attention, with the loss of the water supply and whatever, including Des Moines. Tell us what happened in Iowa and what the situation is tonight.
Well, this is the worst natural disaster in the history of the state of Iowa. But I'm very proud of the way the people have rallied and their patience, their understanding, and the way they've helped each other through this time. The Iowa National Guard's done a great job. State employees worked without air conditioning, without water, without restroom facilities throughout this to provide assistance to people. And so people have really pulled together. And so there's a positive side to this. It's a terrible disaster, and yet it's shown the best in the Midwest ethic of helping other people. And we're going to get through this. Our concern is to get enough help from the federal government to those people that are hurt the most so that they can pick their lives back up, they can repair their businesses or their homes, and hopefully, and their farms, and be able to move forward from this. So I'm hopeful, but I know we got a big cleanup and a lot of recovery ahead of us.
Now, Governor Carnahan, you've got problems on both sides of your state. With you had already had the Mississippi, now you got the Missouri and the Kansas rivers. We already talked a little bit about obviously the situation in Kansas City. Give us an overview of Missouri.
Well, we have record high water on the west side, the whole west side down from far northwest Missouri by St. Joseph to Kansas City. The water's finally receding some today. We have those crests to move across our state. We go across the middle also.
Forgot about that. Yes,
we're going to set record highs at our capital city, 2 feet higher than it was 10 days ago, and that's going to cause...
Now, what river is that?
That's the Missouri.
That's the Missouri is going down through
crossing
the center of the state, right.
And then we're expecting crests next week in St. Louis and below St. Louis, and that, of course, affects Governor Edgar in the southern Illinois area. So we do have a week of tension of record high waters moving across, and that's counting on no more rain. So we've got 20,000.
Are you counting on no more rain?
We're hoping so. We're getting some indication that might be true. We have 20,000 people evacuated out of their homes before today. We've got at least 1,500 businesses closed, and that doesn't count the St. Joseph closings of the last few days. So we've got a record amount of damage, and probably over a third of our agricultural crop of the state, and that's our number one industry in our state, is either destroyed or greatly reduced. So the impact is very, very great in our state.
Governor Edgar, is there a psychic impact on your people who live on the river? Has their attitude about the river changed?
Many of them have seen floods before. They've never seen of this magnitude, and I think there was maybe proved to be a false security because of the levees that had been built since the big flood in the middle of 1960. There's no doubt that some people will not move back. Others will move back because that's the life they know. But this flood is so huge, and it's taking so long to get resolved. There's going to be some, I think, some serious, probably mental problems we're going to have to deal with, something we really haven't talked too much about, but something that our state has already begun to move in as far as counseling and providing help to the people, just as they're going to need infrastructure, they're going to need counseling on handling this catastrophe.
Same problem in Iowa?
Absolutely. You know, when you go on and battle these floods for week after week after week, and it continues to rain, it certainly wears on. But yet, the indomitable spirit, the will to win of the people has been really encouraging. And I've been so proud to go around the state, and I've been all over talking to people, and they say how much they appreciate the National Guard.
Good to see you in a coat and tie, Governor.
You bet, after 2 weeks of blue jeans and the work shirt. But I decided I'd better go back to starting to dress like a governor again. But I'll tell you, I'm really proud of the people. We know we have a lot ahead of us, but it's that spirit I think is going to get us through in the Midwest.
Thank you all three very much, and good luck to all three of you.
Thank you.
We turn now to another part of the world, Asia and China. Secretary of State Warren Christopher, now on his way home from Asia, said his trip demonstrated new American interest and attention to the region. Part of his job was to prepare for a summit of Pacific nations, including China, later this year in Seattle. The NewsHour team has been in China and recently interviewed China's Vice Premier and Foreign Minister Chen Chi-chen. The interview was conducted in Beijing by Robert Oxnam, a China scholar, investment advisor, and former president of the Asia Society.
Mr. Vice Premier, thank you very much for taking time to meet with us. Let me begin by asking you, now that the Cold War is over, who does China see as its major threats and perhaps its major allies?
我的看法不一定每个国家都要确定一个。
I don't think that a country has to set a main enemy or a main threat. We are not going to enter into any alliance, and we are not going to join any bloc of countries. The purpose of China's foreign policy is to create a good international environment for China's economic development. So we are interested in maintaining world peace.
As a follow-up question, recently President Clinton was in South Korea, and he spoke very strongly about his worries concerning North Korea. Since China has a close relationship with North Korea, can you describe your policy towards the situation and what China might do to ease the tensions on the Korean Peninsula?
With regard to the question of the Korean Peninsula, we have two objectives. The first one is to maintain stability on the Korean Peninsula, and secondly, we do not hope to see the presence of any nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula. So our purpose is to ensure the denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. At the same time, we also hope to see the maintenance of stability and the relaxation of tension on the Korean Peninsula. It is impossible to realize one objective in isolation from the other. For example, if one only tries to ensure denuclearization, but if that is done at the cost of peace and stability, that would mean that one has forgotten the fundamental objective. And at the same time, if in order to ensure peace and stability, the two sides there have developed nuclear weapons, and if that's the case, the objective cannot be realized either.
Just one other question about Korea. President Clinton does not rule out the possibility of military force in order to address this question. If indeed that happened, what would China's policy be?
我想美国和朝鲜正在
The United States and DPRK are now having talks on this issue. I think this is the appropriate channel to address this question. It is undesirable to resort to force.
How does China explain the fact that its defense budget has gone up since the Cold War when most other countries have gone down? And does the new acquisition of military technology from the Soviet Union indicate a more aggressive China?
In the figure